The 2024 U.S. presidential election has concluded with a major victory for Trump, who won decisively in both the Electoral College and popular vote. This is the Republican Party's first popular vote win in nearly 2 decades. Before delving into the analysis, I should clarify my stance. Politically, I lean center-left and hold a never-Trump position. I'm not a politician, so I don't need to congratulate Trump on his re-election. However, I absolutely respect the choice of American voters. In a democratic society, elections should be accepted without resorting to conspiracy theories. I'm neither against the Republican Party nor necessarily in favor of the Democratic Party. Yet, as a minority, I support the Democratic Party's inclusive, diverse, and anti-discrimination policies. President Lincoln, widely regarded as one of America's greatest presidents, was a Republican and a role model for all Americans. However, today's Republican Party, led by the MAGA faction, has drifted far from Lincoln's values. Examining the reasons behind MAGA's landslide victory and speculating on its future are necessary. Here I'll review my predictions for recent U.S. presidential elections. In 2016, I correctly predicted Trump's victory. Unlike many of his supporters, I recognized Trump's appeal early on. Having watched the first 4 seasons of The Apprentice, I saw how Mark Burnett and Trump crafted a highly successful show that portrayed Trump as a successful American businessman. The Apprentice was Trump's first moment in the spotlight, with the 2016 election being his second. However, by then, Burnett had distanced himself from Trump, citing Trump's divisive and misogynistic rhetoric. In 2024, Burnett expressed regret over collaborating with Trump, saying he had helped create a monster. As a political outsider, Trump's rise to the White House reflected the possibilities within a democratic system. During the first 3 years of his term, despite his many controversial statements, Trump's administration was largely guided by Republican establishment figures, and America's economy was on an upswing, which contributed to Trump's popularity. At that time, I believed he had a strong chance of re-election. However, the COVID-19 pandemic exposed Trump's weaknesses. His poor handling of the crisis, coupled with a focus on re-election, paved the way for Biden's easy victory. I recall my assessment of Biden then. He simply needed to stay in his bunker and wait for victory, as Trump's mishandling of the pandemic would naturally lead voters to reject him. Addressing some persistent myths, the Biden curve narrative is entirely baseless. The Trump campaign generated this myth after Biden's lead surged overnight in swing states like Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. The reason is well understood by those familiar with U.S. election processes. Many rural counties, which are Republican strongholds, count votes first, leading to an early Republican lead. Meanwhile, Democratic urban areas with higher populations take longer to report. Moreover, due to the pandemic, many Democratic voters chose to vote early or by mail. States like Pennsylvania require all in-person votes to be counted first, then process early and mail-in votes, which are more likely to favor Democrats. This predictable shift was seized upon by Trump's team to create the visually compelling but misleading Biden curve, leaving a lasting impression on his supporters. The second is the latest rumor claiming that this year's Democratic candidate, Harris, received 20 million fewer votes than Biden in the last election, although this figure also circulates as 15 million fewer votes in some versions. This rumor stems from an image showing that during the vote-counting process, Harris had approximately 66 million votes, while Trump had around 71.5 million. The final count had not yet been completed, especially in major Democratic areas like California, where less than half the votes were counted. However, as in the previous election, Trump's campaign created another chart for visual comparison, where the baseline should have been 0 but instead started at 50 million, exaggerating the apparent difference in a way reminiscent of some Chinese statistics. In reality, Biden received 81.2 million votes in 2020, and though this year's count isn't finished, Harris has already reached 70.45 million votes. By the time all votes are counted, she is expected to trail Trump by only 3 to 4 million votes. The total votes in U.S. elections fluctuate with circumstances. In 2016, the total was around 139 million. In 2020, it reached 159 million. By 2024, the current count is about 148 million. In stable times, voter turnout is lower. In 2020, the pandemic exposed serious issues in Trump's administration, driving anti-Trump sentiment among undecided voters. The notion of voter fraud is absurd. Many people in the Chinese language media lack experience with U.S. ballots, leading to speculation. A U.S. ballot typically includes choices for president, Senate, House of Representatives, and possibly statewide propositions. For example, in California in 2024, 10 major local proposals required a statewide vote. The idea of mass fraud is implausible, especially when Republicans were in power during the last election. If the opposition could commit election fraud, the ruling party would be failing its duty. For instance, Dominion Voting Systems sued Fox News for spreading misinformation, resulting in a $787.5 million settlement, proving that while free speech is protected, news organizations pay a heavy price for broadcasting falsehoods. Another case involves a Chinese international student at the University of Michigan who reportedly voted using a student ID and residency proof. This incident was exploited by Trump supporters, claiming non-citizens are voting, leading to suggestions that illegal immigrants can vote due to certain states not requiring photo ID. However, these states aim to simplify voting access, as 11% of Americans lack government-issued photo IDs. In this case, the student's ID served as a photo ID but could not confirm citizenship. Election officials rely on voters to affirm citizenship, as verifying citizenship isn't within their authority. The responsibility for overseeing and verifying votes lies with the Michigan Secretary of State's office. So why couldn't the vote cast by this student be retracted? Michigan's election design actually aims to prevent vote buying and fraud. In early American elections, ballot papers were sometimes printed in different colors, which created a risk for vote buying, as buyers needed a way to confirm that purchased voters actually voted as instructed. Anonymous voting after casting the ballot on-site helps reduce such cases. Some may still argue that this leaves a loophole, allowing non-citizens to vote. Indeed, from 2002 to 2023, there have been 85 recorded cases of non-citizen voting in the U.S. Non-citizen voting is a criminal act. For instance, the Chinese student in Michigan will likely be charged with illegal voting and possibly with making false statements or identity fraud. These are serious crimes, with illegal voting alone carrying a penalty of up to 4 years in prison, along with deportation and a permanent ban from re-entering the U.S. These are serious offenses, not something to be taken lightly. How naive and uninformed must a foreign student living in an information bubble be to commit such brazen acts? It's similar to how, in the U.S., as long as you have no criminal record, you can usually purchase a firearm. If you then use that firearm to rob a bank, the bank teller will cooperate for their own safety. Does that imply a flaw in bank security? Armed robbery is widely recognized as a serious crime, and illegal voting should be similarly understood as a serious offense by citizens of a democratic nation. In California, civic education about voting starts as early as 3rd grade, yet this foreign student evidently lacked such knowledge. The idea of illegal immigrants voting is even more absurd, as being caught would mean both jail time and deportation. How desperate would an undocumented immigrant have to be to risk this? I've said all this to give a basic introduction to the U.S. election system. In the next episode, I'll delve into how Trump's significant 2024 victory came about. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.